Hi there. Just before we get into this week's episode of the Midlife Mentors podcast, I wanted to share the exciting news that my book by Synergy Publishing is now available on Amazon. And if you're in the UK, at Waterstones, Smiths, Blackwell's, and other good bookshops. The Midlife Male Handbook, A Man's Guide to Thriving Through Andropause, is 3 years in the making. Inspired by my own struggles when I hit my late 40s, and also because I see so many midlife men suffering in silence. I couldn't find anything out there that explained what was happening to me, or more importantly, how to make positive changes. So I wrote this book for myself and all the other midlife men out there who might be feeling lost, isolated, or depressed, or are suffering from low energy, weight gain, and a decreasing confidence that's affecting their personal and professional life. My book explains what's going on based on the latest scientific research, and I've also included a 30-day action plan to help busy men regain control and feel like themselves again. The Midlife Male Handbook is available now. Head to all good bookshops or check the show notes for details. In this episode, we're joined by Dr. Harriet Connell, whose challenging personal journey led her to look more deeply into women's health. We talk about new research findings on how exogenous hormones, such as those found in oral contraceptives and hormone replacement therapy, can deplete essential nutrients in our bodies.
Dr. Connell helps us understand which nutrients are at greatest risk, how these deficiencies might impact our well-being, and what steps to take to stay nourished while on these therapies.
Whether you're currently taking the pill, considering HRT, or simply curious about the science behind hormone-driven nutrient changes, this conversation is for you. So grab a seat and get ready to learn how to protect your nutritional balance. Hi, I'm James Davis.
And I'm Claire Davis.
We're the Midlife Mentors, here to lift the lid on how to achieve health and happiness.
The balanced, no-nonsense way.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Midlife Mentors podcast with me, James.
Me, Claire. I was just saying, whoop whoop. I've just done a 17.5k run this morning. It's Friday morning.
Someone is very happy with themselves this morning.
I have got my endorphin runner's high right now. I need to tone it down a bit.
Yeah, but you'll be having that mid-afternoon slump.
I will. Sure. Well, I doubt it'll be mid-afternoon. It'll be in about an hour. You'll be like, wake up, Claire, wake up. No, so I'm running for the MS Society, a half marathon in 2 weeks' time, because if you've listened, I've probably mentioned this in a few podcasts. My brother has MS and is sadly in a wheelchair. So I'm running for him, and I've got a very good friend who also has MS. So yeah, I'm excited, but I've not been well. So I've been poorly for a number of weeks. So the reason I'm so excited is that I can actually do my training plan now.
I know, it's amazing, because I think it's like 2 weeks ago you couldn't get round the park. And now you're smashing 17.5k this morning.
Week and a half. I should have done 16. And me being me, I thought, I'll just add on another 1.5.
What else have we been up to?
Well, your book.
My book.
Big deal.
My book launched.
Much bigger than my run.
And I was obviously very excited about the launch, but I started getting emails from people saying, everyone's saying it's not available in multiple channels. So it was quite a panic. And speaking to the publisher, who was also panicked, and it turned out that it basically sold through in multiple channels. So there weren't even enough copies to fulfill existing pre-orders. So if you did order and you're waiting, apologies. I know some people have got messages saying that it's 2 months to wait. It is not at all. New copies have gone out already. We've ramped up the printing presses. Distribution is rolling and it's out there. So
it was a bit of a panic yesterday morning, though, wasn't it?
It was, but it's a good problem to have, I guess.
Yeah, it was. But there we are. So that's it. And you've got just so many. You're doing workshops and all this kind of stuff on andropause and relationships and things like that.
Very exciting time.
Really exciting. So we've got more, but we can share that on another podcast because we have a guest and we don't want to leave this lovely lady waiting.
No, really excited to broach this topic, because actually I only found out about this myself a few weeks ago in a conversation with someone, and they introduced us to our guest, and she's very kindly agreed to come on. So we have Dr. Harriet Connell, who her own journey, which you're going to hear about in a minute, basically led her to start looking into women's health, but more particularly around hormones, exogenous hormones, and the impact they can have on nutrients in the human body. So, Harriet, welcome.
Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
It's great to have you here. So, tell us a little bit about, you're obviously a GP, but what kind of spiked your interest in looking at nutrients in the body and things like contraception and HRT potentially having an impact?
Yeah, thank you for that. So, yeah, been a GP for a number of years now, and I think which is often the case with many doctors, life events tend to maybe send you on a different trajectory with all your learning. And for myself, a few little health issues really sparked my interest with women's health, and really the lack of support women have, and amazingly, despite women being great talkers, how little we share about our women health issues. So for me, it was pregnancy, hopeless of being pregnancy, really found that hard. Even worse at giving birth, and had a good going postpartum hemorrhage. But the main problem after that was quite significant pelvic floor dysfunction, so urinary incontinence, and actually recognizing how intrusive that is and how little women talk about. And it's only really doing my postnatal checks, I would often probe women about continence and pelvic floor and mood, because I really found it really quite dark having, in those first 12 weeks of having a baby, really hard, which did surprise me. And it's only through repeatedly probing these women who would deny, yeah, things are great, holding back the tears, and really opening up about pelvic floor problems. We would often, at the 6 weeks check, really try and encourage women to go back onto contraception, because we knew they were fertile, and if they didn't want another baby, their fertility was returning. And sort of recognizing, gosh, are we actually doing this justice? Not only are these women postpartum, their body's healing, they're dissolving themselves to feed their child, and then we're whacking on extra hormones. It just didn't feel right. So I've always had a really deep interest in women's health, and plus going through early menopause, I was a good couple of years retrospectively into peri-menopause with all your classic symptoms. And actually, even knowing what I knew, it didn't cross my mind. I didn't put two and two together. Even knowing my mum, she was early 40s when she went through menopause, which is a really good predictor of when you will. No idea. And I think the whole nature of perimenopause, with the loss of confidence, the lack of sleep, and women at that age, you're juggling so much. I mean, you really are spreading yourself thinly. Actually, you're never going to prioritize yourself and think, oh God, you know what? I should tune in on how I'm feeling. It just doesn't happen. So wanting to be more proactive and helping others not struggle as much as I did. And then, so that was the women's health side. And then the nutrient side, which again, no one teaches you at medical school any of the importance of nutrients, or how detrimental low factors are in all ways of the body. In 2022, my husband got diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. And at that point, he had a really aggressive cancer, unlikely to respond to treatment. And we really knew we had about a year. And so I stopped work. And we had two little kids who were 4 and 6 at the time. At that point, there's very little control in your life. There's very little you can control. You're really at the mercy of treatment and medical care. And actually, one thing we knew we could do is control diet. And whether, I guess you never really know whether it makes a difference, but we nosedived into what nutrients, how your gut microbes, that's when I learned about the gut microbiome, how it impacts on sort of antioxidants, the treatment, how you can just in some ways make things a little bit more tolerable for both of us. I mean, obviously him mainly. So I actually had 18 months off work because he died 2 years ago.
I'm so sorry to hear.
Oh, thank you. And you almost, when you get so deep into stuff like that, you can't unsee it or unhear it. So that then also made me realize, the huge importance and the role of the gut microbiome, the estrobolome with estrogen. And so returning to work, which I did, so I had 18 months of work, I was now seeing things, and I don't know whether it's, do you know when you've got one thing on the mind, you see it everywhere. I was just noticing all these these girls and women, low vitamin B12, low folic acid. I'm just thinking, gosh, what has changed over the last 10 years of being a doctor? Because they were just everywhere, and lots of people just struggling with life. And that really sent me down to look into these clinical trials and actually the whole wealth of evidence that there is there that shows how hormones deplete nutrient levels in your body. And that's how I became part of the Health and Her Centre of Research, and who themselves uncovered so much literature on these nutrient deficiencies. So that's how I got here. Gosh, I feel I've got
honestly, what a journey. Yeah. Just want to kind of acknowledge, bless you, the journey that you've been on. That's a lot for you to deal with. And the fact that you're coming out here and there's a real fire and there's a real passion. I think a lot of the time we have life experiences, don't we, that suddenly turn us around in a different direction, and we can make something out of the darkest times in our life. And I think what you're doing is extraordinary in educating people on this. So,
well, thank you. And it is like you've experienced all of this, and I guess selfishly, in some respect, there's a bit of purpose there. If you can make someone else's life slightly, if you're making their menopause slightly more tolerable, or just make a little bit different selfishly, it feels it's happened not for a reason, but there's something that comes out of it all.
Yeah, well, it's not selfish. The impact you're going to make is going to be huge. Yeah. So, and even on this podcast where we go into this a little bit more, as we said, I think before we jumped on here, this is going to be fascinating for anyone that's kind of been on contraception or HRT to dive into this a bit more.
Well, and so needed, because I think, we've had so much progress in menopause and raising awareness around it. And there's been a big push to HRT, and it's life transforming for people. But, no one's really discussing the fact that HRT could be depleting these nutrients, which is then... And I think this is your point when you're saying that your medical school, like modern Western medicine, tends to look at the symptoms rather than looking at the holistic whole and going, well, what's the impact down the line? What does the gut do? So it's really interesting what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us a little bit more, if that's okay. I know we've got some questions, but I'm just going to go with it. So if you could just explain a little bit about particularly the HRT because of our audience as well. And also, I just have to say, I don't know whether you noticed when you were saying about going into peri-menopause early, I was smiling at James because for the last 3 years, I've been going up and down with my health. Only a couple of times a year there's a period of about 6 weeks where I'm like, but there have been other symptoms. And so I haven't been well over the last few weeks, quite a few weeks. And I went to the doctor, all my tests came back fine. I went to a lovely lady doctor on Monday. We were talking. I obviously do a lot around menopause. I do workshops with James and everything. Talks about it a lot. I was in there for half an hour, which is unheard of. Very amazing GP. And she said, Claire, I don't think it's anything immune system wise. I think you might just be in perimenopause. And I was like, how funny. And I was just, it was so funny when you said, when you're in this field and you know all about it, but you just didn't put two and two together. And my mum, I then jumped on the phone to my mum and I said, oh, this doctor thinks that I might be in perimenopause. And she said, I said to mum, when did you start going through perimenopause or have menopausal symptoms? She was like, oh, my early 40s. And I'm 45. I'm like,
yes, this is it. Like the classic. I mean, and I still don't get hot sweat. I mean, I get night sweats, but you associate these hot flashes. You see them, and that's not what everyone gets. And you've got all these. I mean, there are about 50 other symptoms, which I do feel. Well, they can come and go at any point, and I do feel for women, there's kind of, especially when you've had children, you're at the bottom of the list, and and actually probably the household runs quite well because it's run on goodwill, and often it is kids, it's house. I mean, throw in work as well. It almost feels like it's a luxury to have time to think about yourself. But I do think it's that time in life, putting yourself at the bottom of the list probably works for a lot of the time. But when it comes to menopause, or it comes to that point in your life, actually something happens where you can't push on through it. And in fact, if you wanted to reframe it, actually for the benefit of others, you shouldn't push on through it, because it has a ripple effect on family, on children. Like, I remember people discussing, even at beginning of university, so actually our mums would have been going through the same. Everyone was saying how stressed and upset their mums were, and we were like, oh gosh, well, it's just because everyone's gone to uni. But it's not. We've just thankfully got much better understanding, and it's a time when we need to focus on health, because you can't get through, and shit things happen in life. Like, I mean, Rob was 42 when he died, and you think, gosh, we were just on those hamster wheels, just going and going. And then that happens. And you think, this is the time to really reconnect, own your health, prioritize it. And do you know what? Put ourselves at the top for once. Oh, well, close to the top.
That's super positive message.
It really is.
I love it.
Bless you. So where I was going with that, sorry, I went off on a tangent then, because I just thought it was really timely that you said that, and I was giggling to myself. But so which vitamins, I suppose the question that we've got around like the HRT and birth control is, because this just isn't known, which vitamins, minerals or other nutrients in your research are most commonly depleted when we're on these hormone replacement therapies, basically?
So, do you know what? So, just backtracking, this isn't new. Like, the World Health Organization did a report in 1976, so 50 years ago, and even at that point, so the pill had been going for about 10, 15 years. Even at that point, they raised concern about what they were seeing, about the evidence that showing the depletion in these vitamins as a result of the exogenous hormones. And even at that point, they thought it was significant enough to debate whether to put vitamin supplements in with the contraceptive pill. And that's a well-researched paper.
Wow.
And the research is ongoing. So when the reason this all started was in menopause clinics, women, for some reason, were going on HRT. And a lot of people, it helped. Some people just couldn't tolerate. And you were almost replacing feeling rubbish with a rubbish set of side effects. And the discontinuation rate was really high. And this was a repeated problem. It would be almost a bit like Marmite. Some people got it, some people actually, they didn't. And we started looking into research into why this was the case. And there are about 15 to 20 papers which clearly documented and studied that the impact of hormones having on your nutrients. And so sort of extrapolating that to hormonal contraception, actually, there were about 120 of well-evidenced papers that shows how hormonal contraception can impact on nutrients. And so there was a huge body of evidence. And more recently, they've been looking into the effects of what happens when you replace these vitamins. And there's a really good paper in 2015, which is it's a randomized placebo-controlled trial. So it's actually a really well-regulated trial, which had three components: one on placebo with hormonal contraception, one on just hormonal contraception, and one on hormonal contraception and a supplement. And the results, there was a significant improvement in experience with the ones with supplements, and something like a 26% reduction in the discontinued rate. So it seems such a simple measure to almost reclaim those benefits that the pill once gave us, and reclaim the potential that HRT can have for someone by just replacing these vitamins. I'm sure there are lots of other contributing factors, but this is evidence that we know, and actually stuff that we can correct. So what you said about which vitamins. So we know that there are specific vitamins involved. So your B vitamins, so that's your B2, B6, B9, which is your folic acid, and vitamin B12, which a lot of people have heard about. And these vitamins are involved in red blood cell formation, DNA synthesis, and actually mental health and well-being. Because actually when someone comes into a GP with feeling rubbish or tired or poor memory, these are the basic vitamins that we measure. And what we know is these levels deplete, and that is down to a reduction in the binding capacity of the proteins that pick up the vitamin B12. So we've got evidence of how it does deplete those vitamins. So we've also got your zinc and magnesium. So magnesium, really good for actually muscle strength. It's really good helps you manage stress, and really good for sleeping actually. And your zinc is good for skin and immune system. Now these deplete because the estrogen is an activator of something called the renin-angiotensin system. So it's a system that regulates fluid control. So we know that estrogen actually causes an uptake of sodium through these mechanisms, which the side effect people often talk about or know about with the pill can cause bloating, water retention. Sometimes in people's cycles, they can just feel a bit bloated. That's because the sodium is being taken up, but because the body's so clever to try and compensate, it's excreting the magnesium and zinc in replacement. So the sodium's is being taken up, and the zinc and magnesium's being excreted. So we know we're losing those vitamins. And you've also got your vitamin C. We know that depletes because the liver is activated, and it essentially gobbles mechanisms that utilize it. There's a high metabolism of vitamin C. And vitamin C, I think, it's well known for immune system, but actually it's really good for our skin as well. And actually, all of these have a bit of a ripple effect on one another, because we know things like magnesium, it's responsible for about 300 other processes that go on in the body. So there is this ripple effect. And also the hormones, the hormones and nutrients are so interdependent that an absence in one of the coenzymes actually does impact on lots of other systems. So in summary, gosh, I do realise I do ramble.
No, I love it.
It's great. Fascinating stuff.
Your B vitamins, zinc and magnesium, and your vitamin C and selenium. They're the main ones. So often the ones you kind of find in your run-of-the-mill multivitamins.
Mm-hmm.
So they can be replaced. And in this trial, it was a simple replacement of those vitamins that actually helped reduce the side effects.
So I've got a question, and this might be for other people listening as well, because I know we've kind of gone through this, but what is it actually if you were to explain in layman's terms what it is about birth control and HRT, taking these hormone replacement therapies that depletes the nutrients, how would you explain that to maybe someone that came in to your surgery and said, like, I don't understand, like, why are my nutrients depleted when I'm taking HRT or birth control? What would you say to?
So I think there's two levels to it. So one, I would say the hormones have an impact on physiological, on processes in the body that just mean either we're losing more or we're absorbing less and we're excreting more, essentially. So our body's just not holding on to them to be able to utilize them.
Right.
And secondly, I think it's a reflection probably on this day and age that we're not getting the nutrients we used to from food. I think in the rise of our awareness of ultra processed foods and the growing understanding of how we lose quite a few of some of the essential nutrients in the processing of food. I mean, and our lives are busy. People, even with the best will in the world and knowing all this, actually some people just don't have access to organic food. Some people, quite a lot of people can't afford that food. People's lives are busy. So there is a practical element. And I think foods is very different to what it was like 50 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you mentioned it earlier, actually, when people come to you, what are some of the short-term symptoms people might feel from these deficiencies? You mentioned like kind of low energy and just feeling a bit down. And are there any long-term health implications if you didn't address it and you allowed yourself to be depleted in these nutrients?
Yeah, so it's on all. So short-term people come, and I think I've heard you mention it before. This tired, TATT, that tired all the time. People come in and they just, in long and short, they're just not coping with their normal day-to-day life. And previously they were able to. So the energy to do things which sort of support a good lifestyle. So exercise, motivation to work, they can't concentrate, they're just too tired to do stuff with their kids which they would want to. And that's what we see quite a lot. And so in the short term, you will see depletions in these vitamins, so low vitamin B12, folic acid. And I guess in the long term, you can develop anemias because those B vitamins are important for red blood cell formation. Actually, people can be anemic, which actually is another thing just to add onto the list of feeling rubbish, like totally exhausted. So I'd say it's mainly that, just exhaustion, brain fog, I mean, if you think a lot of our cells in our brain, they're very different to the cells in our body. Our cells in our brain, they don't have that fast turnover, and they're pretty much made of all the nutrients we eat. So actually, if you're not getting the nutrients into those cells, your brain just doesn't function. It doesn't fire. It's just, again, some people talk about just thinking through treacle, or they're just not the people they were and the people they want to be. And that's taking into account that we realize in your 40s, you're not going to have the energy of someone in your 20s, but we're talking about just keeping down a job. We're talking about just getting out of bed, getting the kids ready for school. Like, it's stuff that they can do, but their body's just not letting them. So I've got to say, it's all parts of the body. People come in, tiredness, low energy, not sleeping. And then the long-term effects of that are really, we do know it impacts on your thinking, so you have cognitive problems. We know that if you don't exercise, you get cardiovascular risk factors. You can get metabolic syndrome, all these things that, again, it just layers on the challenges that you get later on in life. Well, we're finding you get later on in life anyway.
Yeah, it's so fascinating, isn't it? And this, what I mean, we always say this is like, HRT, it's not a magic pill. You've got to
No.
make the lifestyle adjustments around it. It's why you hear so many anecdotal stories of women who go on it and then they're like, oh, I feel even worse now I'm on it. But here's a really solid reason why.
Or at least one of the reasons, or at least it can give HRT a better chance of giving you the benefits that it needs to. I mean, we've got the with the gut microbiome, which is fascinating in itself, but there's an element called the estrobolome, which is one of the key regulators of all your estrogen levels in your body. So I think you mentioned before, HRT isn't for everyone, and some people unfortunately medically can't have HRT, but those lifestyle measures, diet, exercise, they can make a big difference. It can make really intolerable symptoms manageable, and sometimes even better.
I've got a question on HRT. Obviously, there's a range of delivery systems for it.
Yes.
Does the delivery system make a difference or have an impact, or is it just if you're doing HRT, you're going to deplete these nutrients?
No, it does. So again, I mentioned there's fewer studies, so still it's less research than hormonal contraception, but I think that's coming. I think we are getting research. We know from the evidence that we've got at the moment, we know that oral HRT, so your synthetic estrogen, that has more of an effect on your nutrients, and possibly because or the transdermal has less of an effect because it's body identical. So it's we know that orals has more of an impact. We know that it can be dose dependent. So actually, the higher the dose, you can have more depletions. But we also know we need a lot more research on it. But I do think the discontinuation rates, unfortunately, they are more with the transdermal preparations, and whether that is because actually they can be a bit of a faff, and sometimes people report actually they can't remember when to change it, and they get mixed up. Some people actually, it just doesn't stick on. Some people get a reaction. But it's a case of, I guess it's a case of allowing women to give themselves the best chance, and actually find change is hard anyway, especially when you're feeling so rubbish. And yes, it can be hard to remember. I think pills often quite easy because we're all used, a lot of us of our generation, we're used to taking the contraceptive pill, aren't we? So we're just used to taking a pill every day. But sometimes it's a bit of a weaning process of getting on with things.
And so any women that are listening to this and thinking, I might be going on HRT or considering HRT, I'm putting my hand up right now. You're not going to see audio. And they're thinking, I mean, obviously what we do, I'm into all the nutrients and I take a lot of these nutrients myself. But if there's a lady out there thinking, oh, I don't know whether to go on HRT, is it, are these nutrients depleting anyway? And if I go on HRT, it's going to make it worse. What would you say to someone like that?
So it's really hard. And I think everyone's menopause is very unique and different. What we do know is just regardless, high estrogen levels, which you tend to get perimenopausally. So there's none of this nice gentle reduction. It's up and down and up and down. And actually that is what causes a lot of symptoms. We know it can sometimes peak to higher than it was before. And then plummet. And so we do know these deficiencies can be happening. So I'd say actually separate the two. We need to just day to day optimize nutrition, and the reality, I mean, like I said, in an ideal world, we'd all be picking our vegetables out of the garden and eating them. That's not reality. We need to replace these vitamins, which I've got to say, 10 years ago, I would not have said that as a GP. I would often say you can do anything from your diet. And if anything, embarrassingly, I'd almost be sort of saying it was a bit of a con and a waste of money. But like, I've seen it now, and I can see the evidence, and I've personally experienced it. So I'd say we just need to optimize lifestyle. Menopause is that time when you're slapped in the face with a wet kipper. Like you've got no choice. You have to change it, because otherwise it's life is pretty intolerable. So we have to try and optimize that. HRT, I think, speak to your doctor. Everyone, just, I guess the key is it is safe. We're not really meant to be alive without estrogen. It's there for our body, brains, and our bones. Sorry, our heart, our brains, and our bones. And you know what? I often think if you try it and you don't get on with it, at least you've tried it. It's like, I think quite often we haven't got time to, it feels like we haven't got time to faff around with these things, but actually it's easy to accept the chaos of life in your 40s once you know you've tried something. A lot of people do get on with it, and a lot of people, it makes a big difference. Not everyone, but hopefully those where it doesn't, replacing supplements can hopefully give them a better chance of it helping. Because once you do find something that works, it's incredible, and you realize how rubbish you felt.
It's interesting, isn't it? We just accept it. It's really funny that you were saying. It's just like I shouldn't say this. I hate going to the doctor.
Yes,
like, I hate making a fuss. James honestly is like, Claire, have you phoned the doctor? Claire, have you phoned the doctor? Claire, have you phoned the doctor? Like, I am like a stubborn 7-year-old girl going, yeah, I'll do it. And then he loses. But it got to the stage where I did book him for it. But that's really, really helpful, because I think, I think everything you've just said is right. Being slapped around the face with a wet kipper, it's like you don't have an opportunity, you don't have a choice. It is intolerable if you don't address it. And I love that. I totally agree. It's kind of like, try it, then then you have awareness of what your body responds to and what it doesn't. And then there's always going to be another way. There's always and
that's actually a really good point. If you don't get on with one form, there are lots of others. And actually often with my patients, we accept this is a trial. If it works, brilliant. If not, we've got all these others. We have sort of a stratified plan of what to do if that doesn't work, because then you know you're not going to be just dismissed. And because actually I was quite surprised with the discontinue rate from these papers. So 20% discontinue, because I don't think I see that. But then again, people don't come back to me and say, that's the problem. Like, you discontinue it. You don't see these patients again, because if they came back, you'd be able to talk to them and talk about why it didn't happen and what we can do. They just stop. And sadly, the reality in the NHS, you don't know if someone hasn't come back to you often, which is a shame.
No, I've seen friends go through that. They've gone on HRT, not got on with it. From the bloating perspective, actually, like really uncomfortable, very active, very fit and healthy, and was finding that really difficult to deal with, and other symptoms as well. And like you said, she's just come off it. I think she's fine. She's actually coping a lot better with her symptoms now. But maybe if she'd had someone like you, it would have been possible to say, okay, well, what's the next option that might agree with me?
That's it. And there are so many options, even non-hormonal options. But I mean, again, just going through it for a little bit, I just don't know how women do battle on through it. It's miserable. I know. And you find a lot of women who, the poor things, they're not suicidal in the sense that they want to end their life. They just haven't got the energy to keep on going. And that's not uncommon. You'll have these women who come, I mean, beautifully dressed, so wonderfully presented. They don't want to be alive. And it's so different to the depression that you see, where actually you don't have the energy to get washed and dressed, and you feel you're a burden on other people. These women don't feel like that. They just haven't got the energy to keep going, which is so sad.
You think about our mothers.
I know.
Our mothers, where HRT was just, don't go on it. It's going to give you cancer.
I know. I think she's a superhero. It blows my mind. And my mum herself, she thought she had lymphoma. She thought she had leukemia. She was having these drenching night sweats. She was in her early 40s, and it was a no for her. And I think she just struggled on. And unfortunately, she's now got osteoporosis. She's got all the problems associated with it. But I just don't know how you do go on.
Harriet,
Wow.
this has been absolutely fascinating. I know, like the listeners are going to be like, "Wow!" Ordering their B complex vitamins.
Yeah,
I'm going to.
well, I could talk to you for ages and ages about this. Woman.
But thank you so much for your time. It's been really, really interesting and informative.
Really, really interesting. And I know James is doing a lot of work with Health and Him.
Yeah.
The supplement brand Health and Him. And I know that they have a supplement brand, Health and Her.
And they have a lot of information on their website.
They have a lot of information on their
website.
Really interesting stuff around this. So around supplementation and how it helps with nutrients and like hormones. So honestly, Harriet,
thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it. So
thank you so much. Take care.
All right, take care. Bye.
Yeah.
You've been listening to the Midlife Mentors with Claire and James Davis.
We'd love to hear from you. So drop us a line at info@themidlifementors.com with any questions or topic suggestions.
And make sure you join us on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. You can find us under the Midlife Mentors.
Yeah. What? Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode. And don't forget to take the Midlife Reset Audit now to receive personalised insights into what's holding you back from living your healthiest, happiest midlife. So go ahead and take the audit now at themidlifementors.com/audit.